Good evening and welcome back to another episode of The Longing, where today we're going to be continuing to read Dream Days by Kenneth Grahame. So let's get on with that. And yet not quite alone, for as the fire was roaring at its best, certain stars stepped delicately forth on the surface of the immensity above, and peered down doubtfully with wonder at first, then with interest, then with recognition, with a start of glad surprise. They at least knew all about it. They understood. Among them, the name was a daily, familiar word. His story was a part of the music to which they swung. Himself was their fellow and their mate and comrade. So they peeped and winked and peeped again, and called to their laggard brothers to come quick and see. The best of life is but intoxication, and Selina, who during her brief inebriation had lived in an ecstasy as golden as our drab existence affords, had to experience the inevitable bitterness of awakening sobriety, when the dying down of the flames into sullen embers coincided with the frenzied entrance of Aunt Eliza on the scene. It was not so much that she was at once and forever disrated, broke, sent before the mast, and branded as one on whom no reliance could be placed, even with Edward safe at school and myself under the distant vigilance of an aunt, that her pocket money was stopped indefinitely, and a new church service, the pride of her last birthday, removed from her own custody and placed under the control of a trust. She sorrowed rather because she had dragged poor Harold, against his better judgment, into a most horrible scrape, and moreover because when the reaction had fairly set in, when the exultation had fizzled away, and the young lady portion of her had crept timorously back to its wonting lodging, she could only see herself as a plain fool, unjustified, undeniable, without a shadow of an excuse or explanation. As for Harold, youth and a short memory made his case less pitiful than it seemed to his more sensitive sister. True, he started upstairs to his lonely cot, bellowing dismally. Before him a dreary future of pains and penalties, sufficient to last to the crack of doom. Outside his door, however, he tumbled over Augustus the cat, and made capture of him, and at once his morning was changed into a song of triumph as he conveyed his prize into port. For Augustus, who detested above all things going to bed with little boys, was ever more knave than fool, and the trapper who was wily enough to ensnare him had achieved something notable. Augustus, when he realized that his fate was sealed and his night's lodging settled, wisely made the best of things and listened with a languorous air of complete comprehension to the incoherent babble concerning pigs and heroes, moles and bonfires, which served Harold for a self-sung lullaby. Yet it may be doubted whether Augustus was one of those rare fellows who thoroughly understood. But Selina knew no more of this source of consolation than of the sympathy with which the stars were winking above her, and it was only after some sad interval of time, and on a very moist pillow, that she drifted into that quaint, inconsequent country where you may meet your own pet hero, strolling down the road, and commit what harebrained oddities you like, and everybody understands and appreciates. Dies irae. I pronounced that so badly, I'm so sorry. Those memorable days that move in procession, their heads just out of the mist of years long dead. The most of them are full-eyed as the dandelion that from dawn to shade has steeped itself in sunlight. Here and there in their ranks, however, moves a forlorn one who is blind in the sense of the dulled window pane on which the pelting raindrops have mingled and run down, obscuring sunshine and the circling birds, happy fields and storied garden, blind with the spatter of a misery uncomprehended, unanalyzed, only felt as something corporeal in its buffeting effects. Martha began it, and yet Martha was not really to blame. Indeed, that was half the trouble of it. No solid person stood full in view, to be blamed and to make atonement. There was only a wretched, impalpable condition to deal with. Breakfast was just over. The sun was summoning us, imperious as a herald with clamour of trumpet. I ran upstairs to her with a broken bootlace in my hand, and there she was, crying, in a corner, her head in her apron. Nothing could be got from her, but the same dismal succession of sobs that would not have done, that struck and hurt like a physical beating. And meanwhile the sun was getting impatient, and I wanted my bootlace. Inquiry below stairs revealed the cause. Martha's brother was dead, it seemed. Her sailor brother Billy, drowned in one of those strange far-off seas it was our dream to navigate one day. We had known Billy well, and appreciated him. When an approaching visit of Billy to his sister had been announced, we had counted the days to it. When his cheery voice was at last heard in the kitchen, and we had descended with shouts, first of all he had to exhibit his tattooed arms, always a subject for fresh delight and envy and awe. Then he was called upon for tricks, jugglings, and strange, fearful gymnastics. And lastly came yarns and more yarns, and yarns till bedtime. There had never been anyone like Billy in his own particular sphere. And now he was drowned, they said, and Martha was miserable, and I couldn't get a new bootlace. They told me that Billy would never come back any more, and I stared out of the window at the sun which came back, right enough, every day. And their news conveyed nothing whatever to me. Martha's sorrow hit home a little, but only because the actual sight and sound of it gave me a dull, bad sort of pain, low down inside. A pain not to be actually located. Moreover, I was still wanting my bootlace. This was a poor sort of a beginning to a day that, so far as outside conditions went, had promised so well. I rigged up a sort of jury-mast of a bootlace with a bit of old string, and wandered off to look up the girls, conscious of a jar and a discordance in the scheme of things. The moment I entered the schoolroom, something in the air seemed to tell me here, too, matters were strained and awry. Selina was staring listlessly out of the window, one foot curled round her leg. When I spoke to her, she jerked a shoulder testily, but did not condescend to the civility of a reply. Charlotte, absolutely unoccupied, sprawled in a chair, and there were signs of sniffles about her, even at that early hour. It was but a trifling matter that had caused all this electricity in the atmosphere, and the girl's manner of taking it seemed to be most unreasonable. Within the last few days the time had come round for the dispatch of a hamper to Edward at school. Only one hamper a term was permitted him, so its preparation was a sort of blend of revelry and religious ceremony. After the main corpus of the thing had been carefully selected and safely bestowed, the pots of jam, the cake, the sausages, and the apples that filled up corners so nicely, after the last package had been wedged in, the girls had deposited their own private and personal offerings on the top. I forget their precise nature. Anyhow, they were nothing of any particular practical use to a boy. But they had involved some contrivance and labour, some skimping of pocket money, a much delightful cloud-building as to the effect of their enraptured recipient. Well, yesterday there had come a terse acknowledgment from Edward, heartily commending the cakes and the jam, stamping the sausages with the seal of Smith's major approval, and finally hinting that, fortified as he now was, nothing more was necessary but a remittance of 5 shillings in postage stamps to enable him to face the world armed against every buffet of fate. That was all. Never a word or a hint of the personal tributes, or of his appreciation of them. To us, to Harold and me, that is, the letter seemed natural and sensible enough. After all, provender was the main thing, and 5 shillings stood for a complete equipment against the most unexpected turns of luck. The presents were very well in their way, very nice and so on, but life was a serious matter, and the contest called for cakes and half-crowns to carry it on. Not gewgaws? And knitted mittens and the like. I don't know that word. The girls, however, in their obstinate way, persisted in taking their own view of the slight. Hence it was that I received my second rebuff of the morning. And with that, we come to the end of the next episode. The next episode? I mean, today's episode. So yeah, I jumped back out of the chair again. I will say thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon or night, no matter what time of day it is. This is also the 700th episode, I've just realised to mention. So, hooray for that. I've completely lost track of where I was. Oh yes, something to do with thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon or night, no matter what time of day it is. I hope you all have a wonderful one of it. And as always, we will be back tomorrow for more of The Longing. Goodbye.